Is it frozen? Okay. Welcome back to Hell.
To heaven.
So, just as life would go, nothing went as planned today. My camera's not working, my microphone is dead, but we are here in the
We are
theme of
here.
we show up. We show up, and that's all we can do. I have my green juice and my coffee because I'm detoxing today.
What?
So, yes, I need to drink water too. So, I was really excited to get on this pod with you. So originally, I thought that our next pod would be me talking about my most recent horror story, but that's not going to happen today. We're not doing that today. We're going to talk about some really cool revelations that I had yesterday that hopefully will help someone. So I'm here with Mandy, and we're having a little staycation, which I think I highly suggest that you take some time to do, because I feel already like a bazillion times better getting out of, I don't live in a city, but like getting out of your normal area, and coming out into nature. There's like a little creek right here, and there's like a sauna and a jacuzzi, and I'm just like full cleanse, full detox. I'm gonna go for a run, and there's like a trail to a waterfall. So it's just so good to I would ideally like to completely unplug, which hasn't been possible, and everyone's made fun of me every time I respond to a message. You're supposed to be unplugged. But to kind of, for the most part, try to put the phones down and go ideally out into the forest somewhere and just take a breather. So we have, because of the fires, the most gnarly traffic in the universe right now. It's like 5 miles an hour all the way through LA. So it took me 2 or 3 hours to get to just where I was meeting her, which should have been 30 minutes. And I had all that time in the car to beat myself up. Right. And I was in the car, and I was just like, I suck. I just went through this whole I am the problem, which is, in a lot of ways, I also want to say it is good to recognize your stuff, because the thing, you and I had been talking about habits, and nothing changes if nothing changes, right? And so my kind of revelation that I was having, though, was in that dark space, was that I have had a habit, which I didn't really recognize until recently. I always pegged myself as the anxious attached, right? Because if I take an attachment style test, that's usually what I get. But what happens is my answers would change with someone who is anxiously attached. When I'm with someone who is anxiously attached, I become avoidant. I become what every man has ever done to me, to hurt me. I do that to men when the dynamic is changed. So something changes in my mind to make me an avoidant around people that are, ironically, like me.
I do the same
Or,
thing.
yeah, you do. I know, you're just like me.
It's like we're sharks and you smell blood in the water and it's like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah. And I had someone say to me the other day, I don't feel seen by you. And I was like, and I just started recognizing all of the little things that I was doing that are very avoidant behavior to this person, that I just didn't think about, didn't recognize, because they're not someone that I was romantically interested in or whatever. I wasn't thinking about their feelings, because that wasn't the person I couldn't have that I was going after. So nothing matters in that space, as long as I was not being an asshole. I wasn't being mean, but probably there's a lot of guys out there that would say they weren't being mean to me when I felt unseen and hurt by them, because they're not thinking about my feelings, because there's no feelings on their part invested. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's self-serving and we all have a tendency to be a little bit self-serving.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
then he and I had this breakthrough moment as we were driving up here, where I was like, it's the biggest ick that I get is from intimacy. And we were like, I was in the car and I was like, literally after being intimate with someone, and that doesn't necessarily always mean sex. But with sex, it's absolutely like straight up, all of a sudden I'm like, don't touch. But it also means like if I'm intimate, I cry in front of them, I'm vulnerable with them. If I get intimate with them, if I show them myself, if they see a part of me that maybe is shameful, maybe is very vulnerable, very like deep inside me, which is ironic because like that is what sex is, right? It's intimate. But if they see also into you, into your soul, into like your heart, into who you are, I get the ick. So my big fear then to really identify is intimacy. That is what scares me. And if you pull it back, probably one would say that why would someone be afraid of being intimate? Probably because they're afraid if they are, they'll get hurt on a subconscious level. But it doesn't show itself that way. It doesn't show like in that moment, I don't feel like, oh, I don't want to do this with you anymore because I could get hurt. I feel grossed out. It's a very weird way that it surfaces.
So you could take that intimacy and vulnerability are like together. And if you struggle with intimacy, because I had the same thing, um, it stems from the fear of being vulnerable. Because what happens when you're vulnerable and it's in an environment, like if you take it all the way back to any environment where you were not allowed to express vulnerability because whoever you were around, like your primary caregivers, perhaps, or like it could be a relationship space, that they didn't know how to hold that vulnerability because perhaps they didn't know how to be vulnerable themselves. So it's a learned behavior. And when you struggle with that, I mean, struggling with intimacy has so many layers. This is just one of them, but like if you spin it back to like the very core, it's often deeply connected to the fear of vulnerability, because if I show you who I am and you don't like that, then that means I'm unacceptable. And if I'm unacceptable and then you spin that fear out, that brings up rejection, that brings up low self-worth. And when we're rejected, we're like cast out of the tribe. And what happens, like if you take it back, you can't survive on your own. So you may as well be dead. It's literally like a fight for our survival. It's this innate thing within us.
Yeah.
We're wired for connection. So
Yeah.
it's like monkey see, monkey do. Let me mirror to you what I think you want to see. And
Yeah.
now I'm going on to a whole nother topic, but I'm just going to roll with it. But by doing that, you are not being authentically you, and then you're self-compromising, and that's like a whole nother spiral that we could go down.
Yeah.
Self-compromise,
Yeah.
resentment.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways that can go. And it's obviously more comfortable. Not I don't want to say more comfortable, but it's such a good feeling when you are able to be like I was also talking last night with Mandy about how like when I'm with her, when I'm with you, I'm able to be the most vulnerable and show you guys the darkest parts of me without any fear at all that I'm going to be like rejected or seen differently or judged. Like, I feel with you guys, like I could say, I killed someone and you'd say, let's bury the body, like that level of like trust and faith that not only in another person, but that they are not going to leave you and abandon you and see you differently and judge you and make you feel like you are not worthy, like is such a beautiful thing. And I think that, I mean, let's take it down to the end, right? Let's go the spiral, right? So I think that there's two things. So if we practice these things, right, because we have to retrain our brains in these habits that have been taught to us by early childhood, whatever. So you take it down one way. So say I am practicing and I get vulnerable with someone, either there's like a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever. There's only two options, right? Number one, I get vulnerable and I sit there in the discomfort and I'm like, I'm really uncomfortable in this. And they're like, you're good. Like, it's fine. I'm so glad you told me that. And you work through it. And then all of a sudden you feel seen and then you're like, I did it. Oh my gosh, I did it. And then you can do it again. Or they do see you differently and they do judge you and you feel that rejection, or you actually get rejected. You get vulnerable with someone and then they reject you or they ghost you or whatever. And I feel like there's an opportunity there, right, to either make it allow it to make your habit worse and perpetuate that cycle, that now I'm even more afraid to be vulnerable with people because I was vulnerable with him and he rejected me and now I really don't want to do that ever again. Or in that moment, which is the hardest thing to do, be like, rejection is God's protection. This person didn't see me, didn't accept me, sees me as less than. That's their problem. God sees me and God loves me, and I already have my worth and my value. And if they don't want to see me and meet me there like my safe people do, that's a them problem, not a me problem. And that is the hardest thing to do, especially if it's like someone you're romantically interested in. I think it's a lot easier, not necessarily a lot easier though, with girlfriends, because like a girlfriend breakup is gnarly. Those hurt, you know. So like
Yeah,
yeah, if a girl was to respond poorly to me, I think that that would hurt just as bad, but in a different way. But yeah, it's an opportunity and one of those things that you like have to constantly work on. But I wanted to like kind of share that because it's like maybe some people don't recognize that intimacy to them is more than sex, first of all, and it could be actually like the act of being intimate, being like you said, intimacy and vulnerable, the same thing. Being vulnerable with someone can actually make you feel like you're grossed out, and the root of that isn't that you're grossed out, it's that you're scared.
I literally have been going through this. Like, I have been living this. And it's so interesting because I, I've got such a beautiful space. And let me just tell you, I didn't realize like how traumatized I was till having this really beautiful safe container. That is my relationship now. But literally, I've gone through that. And it's like when I take that step to do something different, so like instead of self sabotaging or instead of going quiet, and I have a whole bag of tricks, not using that toxic bag of tricks, which actually is communicating honestly my fears and sharing that with someone. And I've been deathly afraid to do it, but I've done it. So strange. In the moment that I do it, I get this weird mixed feeling. It's like freedom and then it's this disgust. It's like this person who's like, you're weak. And I've actually
Yeah.
had to look at it and be like, I've had to thank that part of me because that is the part of me that protected me, because I have been in a relationship where my vulnerability and my honesty was consistently weaponized against me, and it was never safe to really be me. It wasn't. So unlearning that, and actually instead of like, my first reaction was to go to like get like aggressively push this person away and judge them. And then I was like, I actually have to love her because she's like, I did this ritual actually in my meditation where I saw her, this part of me, and I was like, I thank you. But now this new version of me is stepping in because I'm like, I need to process these things in all kinds of ways. But
Yeah.
I think that's just it's because you and I'm sure there's a lot of people that have invested in their growth as well and can relate to this. And if you haven't, like, this is what it looks like. We are constantly holding up mirrors for each other, working through stuff, and like really dedicated. We have drank the self improvement Kool Aid. Okay. We've tasted like the faith juice, and it's
Mhm.
great. The discipline detox is amazing. And because we've experienced it, like, we know the freedom that comes with it. And it does get easier to make those hard choices, but it's still hard. Like the conversation
Hard.
you and I were having the other night, I could see how much pain you were in having to make this hard choice, but you did it.
Well, it was like I technically didn't. Well, I didn't know I did. Oh, actually, this is a good This is a great example. Okay, so Mandy pointed out yesterday too that like it's so important to celebrate little wins, and then I've been really bad at that, and I am the hardest on myself. I am like I said, I spent an hour and a half in the car telling myself how horrible I am. Like I was like, you're just as bad as every guy that's ever hurt you and this and that. But the key is those baby steps and then celebrating those little baby
Yes.
steps. I would say to you that the other night I did not succeed. I did not do the right thing. I was open to doing A, B, and C thing. So therefore, I failed because I shouldn't have been even open to doing it. But the reality is, I sent a text and I set a boundary. That boundary protected me from said situation happening. Whereas back in the day, I wouldn't have ever sent that text. I would have been just over there. I would have just gone over there. I would not have even like, you know what I mean? I would have just been like, oh, I happen to be in San Diego. Or like, what?
That is it. That's you showing up. And this is what I feel I'm going to bring God into this a bit and faith into this is it's like, you know, God will work with us at whatever level we're at. And if we've gone down and we need that help, he'll come down there to help us. So the point is that you still showed up. You were struggling with it, but you still set the boundaries and you sent the message instead of going over there. And he threw you a freaking bone. Okay. The guy, you know, we know what happened. Didn't happen. And I feel like that is what happens. You'll have like that enemy in your head telling you that you're worthless, that you're all these things. And it's as simple as just recognizing actually these thoughts are not for me because I'm not a bad person and I'm gonna bring it to faith because faith has saved my ass. Like really.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And we have to just like continue. And that's the thing is like when I look at it, and when I look back at my whole last 2 years, almost 3 now of being single, there are so many situations that I didn't get in a bad relationship because I've been single for 3 years, and every single one of those almost relationships that would all have been the exact same. Like not all of them, but a lot of repeats of my toxic relationships represented themselves in a new human. And I could look back at almost every one of those and be like, well, the Lord spared me because I was running full speed towards that relationship. I wanted that. I wanted it bad, you know? But the reality is that the reason they didn't have it, yes, is because the Lord shut the door. But I don't believe the door would have shut if I didn't set the boundaries, make those moves, do those little tiny things that I never would have done before. 9 times out of 10, those little things were as simple as I'm not going to do A, B, and C if you don't A, B, and C because then I'm not feeling respected. This is what I require. This is what I expect now. This is where my bottom line is, my top line. This is what like my expectation. The bar is now here. And so verbally saying that has gotten the bad ones, bad for me, maybe not bad people, but bad for me to leave. Every time has protected me. Whereas like the old me would have not stood up for those things, would have just been like whatever I had to do to get them because it was more about accomplishing that win, that wanting to get something because
familiar.
I was
Yeah. And it's a
now,
dopamine hit. Like that's what it is. That's a dopamine hit.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. Yeah, I'm very able to recognize it. I remember being at your house and getting a text, and I literally fell off the bed. I was so excited, but I was able to recognize, like, this is so unhealthy. You know, like, you should not be getting that excited when you're getting a text from someone. That's not normal. That's not healthy. To be that excited means they've withdrawn something, some power from you, so that when they give it back to you, you feel like okay again because they're now developing a dependency on them in you. And a lot of times, like people that know this game, maybe even do it on a subconscious level, and this is the avoidant, this is what I'm saying, is it's like I have also been guilty of doing this to people where I will pull back and then I'll give them a little bit just to make sure they're still there, right? And I am now recognizing that I've done that to other people, but I know for sure guys have done that to me. And it's like, I want them and they retreat. And so then it makes me want them more because my anxious attachment style kicks in. And it's a beautiful time also to practice. Don't go after it. Don't do anything. Sit on your hands. Do not send the text. Sit on your hands. But then the text inevitably always comes if it is an avoidant type person because they always come back. But now they've got you a little more hooked because they made you wait, or they this or that, and this and that, and and then but a healthy relationship, right? You won't feel that surge of energy when they finally text you back because you're used to them texting you back because it's healthy and it's dependable, it's reliable, it's consistent. So if you have dependable, reliable, consistent communication, it will never give you that spike unless they're like, happy birthday, I bought you a Chanel, like crazy stuff. Okay.
It's
Well, we were, yeah, it is. Baby steps.
Yeah.
Baby steps.
It's baby steps. It is, and it's you have to give yourself grace, but you also have to be consistent. And it's not about excuses, but it's also not about hating on yourself because you cannot shame yourself into changing. You cannot.
Yeah, that's huge. That is huge. I feel like so much of my life I've tried to do that, right? And then what happens is we go through from what I was reading yesterday, the anorexia stage, right? Or I'm shamed, so I'm just not gonna talk to anyone or like date anyone at all. And then what happens is like any drug, you relapse eventually, and especially with love, like you just can't go without love forever. So eventually you go rush back into something instead of learning a healthy balance of how do I have healthy communication, healthy interactions, eat healthily, be going on dates with different people because I'm not love bombing or being love bombed by anyone and cutting everyone off. That's not healthy. It's too fast. Like slowly getting to know individuals is that's how you date healthily, going to lunch, going to dinner, having conversations. But you can't do that without practicing and being very slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
But it's tough.
Slow is the key word.
Yeah. I think slow is like my word of the year.
It's a good word. Me too. Love it.
It is. Well, thank you guys for watching or listening. Tune in next time for Raising Hell to Heaven. We love you.
Thank you. We love you. Bye.